There is a psychological warfare that we're dealing with that many people are unaware of. Even myself, before researching further today, of the psychological warfare, including what's online, and it's all by design to separate us from nature. Surprisingly, while they've got this climate scam happening, while they've got this green imperialism happening, they're wanting with cybernetics to control descent, not just descent, but control our lives, but through an internalization, a behavioural steering and behavioural control. And I'll explain how that works, but they're wishing to control us artificially via, digital ID and via this cybernetics framework, separating us from anything naturally given to us by birth, from birth onwards. A modern panopticon. So I'm going to explain to you now what I've come to understand. 1. The critical view, self-regulation versus psychological imprisonment. This argument is rooted in Michael Foucault's ideas of biopower and governmentality, where modern power shapes behaviour by making individuals internalise control mechanisms. Key characteristics: internalized surveillance. Individuals monitor themselves instead of being watched. Individual responsibility. Managing health, success, behavior, and productivity becomes personal. You failed to self-optimize or self-actualize. Algorithmic governance. AI or cybernetic systems guide behavior through nudges, scoring, for example, social credit or digital feedback loops. I don't know if you recall me saying quite earlier about psychology that I felt like for a while now, and I've delved into it in different areas, but that psychology was a form of conditioning that I felt like it wasn't the truth of. It separates us from externalization, from looking at the actual system that's at play, that conditions us even with trauma and with the way we cope with life. That it's never to look at the system rather than to look internally within us to cope. And I feel like that is an actual by design framework, and it ties into this very, very framework now of cybernetics. Algorithmic governance. AI or cybernetic systems guide behavior through nudges. I've said that before. Self-control. Individuals discipline themselves often without realizing the systemic forces at play. The result: autonomy becomes performative, similarly free but shaped by invisible systems. Well-being and compliance are measured by alignment with predefined models of success or sustainability. This view aligns with critiques of technocratic governance proposed by cybernetic-inspired futurists and global planning bodies. The Club of Rome's view. The Club of Rome advocates self-regulating societies and decentralized decision-making to avoid top-down authoritarianism. I can't even say that. I know it. I know when I look at it, I know what it is. Authoritarianism. Anyway, their vision includes societies adjusting behaviors based on feedback, example, climate data, ecological limits, citizens educated to make sustainable choices, a world organism balancing collective action and personal responsibility. The risk is such the risk is that such frameworks could morph into highly managed behavioral systems under the guise of freedom or resilience, which they are, which is by design. It is not they can and it's a byproduct. It is that it's by design and it's intentional. Is it psychological imprisonment? It can be, especially when individuals conform to metrics. Systems become opaque but influential, like credit scores or reputation algorithms. Dissent or nonconformity leads to exclusion. This highlights the conflict between technocratic idealism and liberal democratic values. The gradual implementation of behavioral control. In recent decades, society has witnessed a system of behavioral control that uses self-regulation, surveillance, and incentivization to induce conformity. This constitutes a form of psychological imprisonment where individuals internalize systemic norms, believing them to be expressions of personal choice. I think when I've said in a few other videos that I feel as though we are in a system made to suppress us, made to fail us, just there's glass ceilings that are constantly there, and this ties into all of this, that there's a system of behavioral control, and I'm finally putting it into words. This is like an amalgamation of, if I was to externalize what my thoughts were. And this is really me trying to explain what is happening and what's been happening for over a decade. Personally, throughout my whole career, I have experienced this, and I don't know about yourself, but this is what I've dealt with and I've had to go through, and to finally put this into words where it's actually the current system or the current environment and the future environment, and it's worsening. I can understand now. The reason why I explain this is explaining this and understanding it and putting it into words helps me not be so confused and so confused to the point of fearful, because it gives it a face. All of this, it gives it a face, so I can grasp it, I can understand it, and I can see it for what it is and what it can become. And it then makes perfect sense. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not going crazy. This is literally what's been happening this whole time, and what is about to happen, even what's about to become a lot worse. Education, standardization, and behavioral conditioning. Students are assessed through grades and digital feedback, encouraging compliance over independent thought. Digital media, social media platforms reward conformity and punish deviation, shaping identities to algorithmic preferences. That is exactly what's happening. That is the real censorship industrial complex. And it's happening with how even accounts respond to my content. Workplace. Digital collaboration tools extend managerial oversight into private spheres, encouraging hyperproductivity and self-discipline. They forget exploitation, but never mind. Health and wellness. Fitness trackers and wellness apps promote constant self-quantification, turning health optimization into a moral imperative. Finance and credit. Credit scoring systems condition economic behavior with access to services linked to conformity to data-driven standards. Public health. During COVID-19, digital health passes and biometric tracking introduced conditional access based on compliance with health mandates. Environmental governance. Systems like carbon footprint monitors and ESG-linked identities frame ecological responsibility as an individual duty, with non-compliance seen as antisocial. This forms a modern panopticon, where individuals willingly adapt to invisible systems and freedom becomes conditional. Invisible systems, glass ceilings. And freedom becomes conditional, confined within algorithmic boundaries. I bet no one talks about that complex. Cybernetics and governance, from theory to practice. Cybernetics, coined by Norbert Wiener in 1948, is the study of control and communication in systems. It focuses on feedback loops, self-regulation, and adaptive systems, tools for managing complex processes. Modern governance applies these principles to monitor, evaluate, and adjust human behavior. Modern systems shaped by cybernetics. ESG scoring, used to rate individuals, corporations, and cities on sustainability and ethics, shaping behavior via metrics and incentives. Smart cities, using sensors and AI to manage traffic, energy use, law enforcement, and waste, applying cybernetic principles for efficiency and control. Digital identity frameworks, centralized databases, track identity, linking access to services and rights to behavioral data. Did I get that right? Social credit and reputation systems, data surveillance combined with behavioral feedback loops, rewards for good behavior and penalties for bad behavior. Why it matters. These systems are not based on secret agendas, but represent real-world trends that have been normalized over the past decades. Critics highlight risks to privacy, autonomy, and freedom, while proponents argue these systems promote efficiency and sustainability. The idea that cybernetics and data-driven governance are shaping society through behavioral control is a real phenomenon already unfolding. Here are a number of references and case studies. So I'll give you the link to this so you can see the whole list. Probably there's more. These are the other references. It goes down to the case studies about China's social credit system and the smart cities like Singapore and Barcelona using sensors and data analytics to regulate citizen behavior. So this is fact. This is not conspiracy theory, okay? We're dealing with the current. If you're disconnected from that, connect to it and be updated and educate yourself on this sort of these frameworks and systems theory. Cybernetic mindset and governance. The principle, the application, and the example of feedback loop system optimization, self-regulation, and data as control. My interest at this point, given all of this is in response, what I've written here and what I've researched, this is in response to a report done by the Club of Rome about that we would disconnect more from nature and it will be all about us obsessing or us being completely focused on self-regulation and self-management. And it's all about really psychological warfare in cybernetics. They don't say that, of course, but that is really what is happening. If we're too focused on self-regulation and self-management to even connect to ourselves and to nature and to be so far apart from that while they are putting through blended finance and privatizing all natural assets to own everything around us and own the nature around us, then that just seems to me like psychological imprisonment, and that's what's about to happen. It's a global MK Ultra situation, and this is really what I wanted to bring home today, because it ties into so many things that has been happening over the last decade, and that's been happening online constantly, and that is going to happen in the future. So self-regulation, the application is internalized control within yourself, and social nudges via apps and gamification. Feedback loops, reward or punish behavior. I mean, I get that all the time. Carbon tax, energy rationing apps. Wow, okay. System optimization, model society like a machine, population control, smart grid allocation. Yeah. So this is a part of the report that I was responding to initially. The report is called actually, this isn't what it's called. It is called Reconsidering the Limits to Growth, a report to the Russian Association of the Club of Rome in 2023. The chapter here is socio-political transformation, a difficult path to cybernetic society. And it says here, that is highlighted, digitalization and total computerization of all spheres of life will continue and accelerate. The entire population of the world will be covered by information networks. Everyone will be under control, and human autonomy will practically disappear. People will increasingly transfer their decision-making function to self-regulating and self-managing systems, artificial intelligence, and accordingly will increasingly depend on the algorithms embedded in them. The world will be more and more technogenic. However, if earlier nature was the object of technological transformations, now people per se by technologies, genetic engineering, artificial organs and cloning, etc., and their consciousness, cognitive technologies, neural interfaces, neuropsychological effects, psychotropic substances, etc., are the objects of changes. Number 4, the world has become unified and interdependent. Global resource constraints and environmental problems have arisen, and the irreversible impact of human activity on nature. The irreversible impact of human activity on nature and climate has been realized. How psychopathic can you be? While they continue to mine the shit out of the Amazon, and they continue to wreak havoc on this environment, they gaslight the shit out of you so you can self-manage and self-regulate. It's your fault, while they profit from each side and every point of this market, along with the need to take into account the arising limitations in practical activities. The authors of this report, the Russian authors, are affiliated with the Russian Association of the Club of Rome, and they contributed to this report here. Well, obviously. But this is just to prove that Russia is not our enemy, is not Western democracy's enemy. It's a uniparty. The main goals that have always been is 1, reduce the world's population, particularly in the developing sector, and 2, ensure that control of the world's raw materials remains in the hands of a tiny handful of crown multinationals. 1, reducing the world's population, but also controlling the world's population, I would say, is in the cybernetics as to what I've just described to you, and 2, ensuring the control of the world's raw materials is privatized and transferred from national governments to the imperial government, is what's happening with green imperialism and blended finance, open banking, etc., etc. So this is what's happening, and this is what's been happening for a very, very long time. Meaning the Club of Rome's objectives under green imperialism and Malthusian eugenics, formed by Prince Philip of the Holy Roman British Empire, is simply for global control and imperial restructure of the sword, becoming a cybernetic system that psychologically imprisons us via individual self-governance, while Charles and the monarchy is collapsing. Rather, it's restructuring. Of course it does. DARPA's developed technologies based on systems theory, because DARPA is the one that helped create AI. If you recall one of my last videos discussing the origins of entrepreneurship and Silicon Valley and technology, and is it the company that scouts like Peter Thiel and all of these entrepreneurs supposedly, and molds all of their entrepreneurial ideas, and why technology is so encouraged in every entrepreneurship program there is within universities. DARPA was the one that really created the whole environment to develop cybernetics, surveillance, AI, and everything. Because this was by design according to the plan. This was according to the imperial restructure. Ever since World War II occurred, technology would be used to bring about this restructure and this control. So DARPA's developed technologies based on systems theory, AI, and cybernetics serve the very purpose of the Club of Rome in their analysis of global problems. Therefore, Prince Harry pretends he is battling a system his own family created to help implement global control. Just think about that. I'm going to say that again. Prince Harry pretends he's battling a system his own family has created to help implement global control. Just like how he and his brother are pretending to connect us with environmentalism and the issues of climate change, while designing cybernetics to drive us away from our natural environment. It's all one big show of gaslighting the shit out of the public, tying back to the individual ownership, or the enforcement of individual ownership, like self-regulation and self-management of the new global governance. And I've just mentioned here that Macron with Trudeau and Ardern are but puppets of this system. When you consider that the World Economic Forum, you'll see in a short video that I might even add to this video, you will see Klaus Schwab discussing how World Economic Forum was created as the vessel for Club of Rome's purpose. So any young global leader that was put through that program, which was actually influenced by Prince Philip's Edinburgh Awards, anyone that's been put through that, like Jacinda Ardern, like Macron, like Trudeau, they are but puppets of this very system.
I've worked on climate change for 25 years.
I worked on climate change since 73.
So you
Just to
worked
tell
on it
you,
longer than
because
I
I was the person who gave the Club of Rome the first big platform. I share with you.
The Imperial Industrial Revolution enslaved us into a conditioned proletariat, along with democracy that made you believe you being educated to be a slave to the empire and pay taxes were your duty and free will. Now they wish to remove us, to build walls around our very minds. I think I should have said they wish to remove us from nature, to build walls around our very minds.
Will probably win this election. I am constantly saying to my own party, Labour Party, which will probably win this election, you've got to focus on this technology revolution. It's not an afterthought. It's the single biggest thing that's happening in the world today of a real world nature that is going to change everything. Leave aside all the geopolitics and the conflicts and war and America, China, all the rest of it. This revolution is going to change everything about our society, our economy, the way we live, the way we interact with each other. I think we're living through a period of massive change, right? This is the biggest technological change since the Industrial Revolution, for sure. How do you use it to transform healthcare, education, the way government functions? How do you help educate the private sector as to how they can embrace AI in order to improve productivity? I mean, this is a huge agenda for a government and a really exciting one. You know, people get a bit depressed about being in politics because you get all this criticism. People certainly in the West feel society is not changing fast enough and well enough. And I say, no, it's a really exciting time to be in politics because you've got this massive revolution that you've got to come to terms with.
It's very interesting that this one British man, a Fabianist, that was created the proletariat and the education system from the Industrial Revolution through Owenism and the Lancasterian system, which was really commissioned. You've got this one British man talking about the government creating a whole new global society. He's not talking about the British government. He's talking about the Imperial government, about the global Imperial government, and he is talking about global systemic change, which is the cybernetics and the technology used to enforce this change and this way of control and expansion. And expansion is not for us. Expansion is ownership of all natural assets. Thank you.